This week in PlayStation, we're talking about the first game we ever played on PlayStation, rumors of a state of play, and our Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown review. We'll have all this and more because this is PS I Love You XOXO. Yo, what's up? Welcome to PS I Love You XOXO, your weekly PlayStation conversation. That's Tim, that's Janet, I'm Blessing Adeoye Jr., and if you love what we do, please support us with the KindaFunny membership on Patreon or on YouTube to get all of our shows ad-free, watch us record them live, and get a daily exclusive show. Oh God, it's not stopping. You can get PS I Love You for free with that. Do I keep going? Do I just keep going?
I don't know.
God, why?
It went for a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when we're reviewing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
Yeah.
You can get PS I Love You for free with ads and without.
I have no idea what happened.
Why did it not stop?
I don't know. It's terrifying.
It's one of those things where the longer it kept going, the more I was like, if it keeps going, am I going to suffocate? Like, do I just fucking choke on all the smoke? God dang. Man. Of course, you can get PS I Love You for free with ads or without ads. Or sorry, with ads and without the exclusive content on YouTube and on podcast services around the globe. Thank you to our Patreon producer, Delaney Twining. Today, we're brought to you by BetterHelp. But let's start with a PSN message from you. Mark PDX writes in to kindafunny.com/PSILY and says, what was the first game you played on each generation when you brought home your new PlayStation console?
Great question.
Do you guys remember the answers to this?
Fuck, no, I don't
To
remember.
some
at
of them,
all.
yes. Some of them, no.
Who wants to start?
Go for it, Janet.
PS2, it's tough because I got all my consoles like a little bit late, like to some degree. Like I wasn't like a day one adopter because I was a child and parents don't care about that shit.
Same.
Like, you know? So I'm like trying to think of what are some of the things I played and then what was the earliest released of those things. Like for PS2, you know, Ratchet and Clank, Jack and Daxter, Metal Gear Solid 2, but I don't know what's the earliest of those. Maybe
Jack and Daxter was probably earliest.
maybe even some older games too that had like collections and things too. So like, but yeah, it'd be one of those. Like kind of it's funny because especially like when you're younger, like it's not like you're going deep into the weeds usually. It's like, hey, I had 1 year to plan what game I'm getting and I'm gonna get the highest rated game of all time or whatever. So it is probably one of those like classic platformers, I would say.
Was the PS4 the first PlayStation generation that y'all had one day one?
No, PS5.
Oh,
for me.
PS5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm with the elite, and I'm never going back. Like day one adopters get screwed, and I'm happy to be screwed by day one
Yeah.
adoption. It is just too fun.
Well,
to
that's
be
the nice
day
thing
one.
about me because like the first PlayStation that I owned was the PS2,
Yeah.
and I got that way after the fact, right? Like I went and I wrote down what I think might be the right answers. But for PS2, I believe my first game was Spider-Man 2 because I had played a lot of Spider-Man 1 in my next door neighbor's house. His name was Freddie. He had an Xbox with Spider-Man 1, but then also one of my friends, I think it was Addison, had Spider-Man 2, and I played it like
Addison.
it's always Addison. I played it 1 or 2 times at his house, and I was like, "This is incredible! I need this video game." And finally, my mom and dad finally got me a PS2. I saw Spider-Man 2 on the shelf, and I was like, "Oh, this one." And so that must have been 2004, because I think that game came out in like 2004ish, right? It's a similar thing when I go through. So PS3, I believe my first game was Burnout Paradise, but I was either that or Mirror's Edge or GTA 4. You know, I think I might have gotten those all at the same time. Like I got my PS3 way after the fact, so those were all games that I was getting at like in like the discount pile at GameStop. But then for PS4 I got only 1 year late. And so I believe my first game for that would have been a Shadow of Mordor, because I remember like falling in love with that like very early on into playing the PS4. And then for PS5, got that at launch. I had the launch library through like codes and stuff. But Astrobots Playroom or Astro's Playroom is probably, I guess, technically my answer there. That was the first game I booted up. And so
that's the same for me. And then for 4, it was I do remember vividly getting 4. Again, I told the story before on PS I Love You of my credit card got like the limit got raised, and that's the day I went to Best Buy to get my PS4. I was like, let's go. Like I have a job, I can pay for this. And then I lost that job, and then I was like, man, life's gonna be really hard.
I gotta pay this back now.
Yeah, and I paid it back until the PS5 came out. I was paying off that credit card. The first game I probably played, I'm gonna say it was probably No Man's Sky. Like I got like the JL bundle. I got No Man's Sky. I got Bloodborne, and I got I forgot what the third game I got. I might have just got 2K for my brother, but yeah, Bloodborne, obviously incredible game, but not a me game, and definitely not a me game at that time. So
Yeah.
I will say though, it was really fun, like just experiencing like the visuals and the vibes in No Man's Sky, even though that didn't end up being a game that like clicked with me. Like just the takeoff and like the exhilaration of that. Like it was fun to like get to experience that. But those are my first PS4 games.
I similar to you guys, like didn't have a lot of the PlayStation systems early. I got them way late in some cases. The PS4 I ended up getting was my first home console that I got day one from PlayStation. My first PlayStation console that I was a day one adopter for, though, was the PlayStation Portable. That was the first console I personally got myself, and I was so damn excited for it. But going all the way back, PS1, I ended up getting a very late, and it must have been Crash 3. Would have been my first one that I actually owned there. Although I played a ton of PlayStation at Kevin's house, so I had a pretty good PlayStation understanding from that.
For 2, that's also where I hit up a lot of 1, where I had like the Spyro Collector's Edition with like the 3 games, and I'm sure I like hit up some Crash there as well. Like, so it was, and I think that's why it's like it's funny when you get into something, but then you're like they're late, or if it's something that's like backwards compatible. Where I do have a lot of those like. I have played a lot of PS1 games because I had my PS2 and I would play them finally there, like after, not having access to it before.
So then going into the PlayStation 2, that was like, I'm just going to throw this out there. I might be wrong about this. I think I might have been like 10, maybe 11 around there. So I was able to make my own thoughts and decide I wanted to make purchases in a way that felt a little more educated than just like action figures on the shelf. Like, like, oh, I want the PlayStation 2. But then I really had to think, but do I want the GameCube more? Like, you know what I mean? And we all know the answer to that one. But I eventually did get a PlayStation 2, and I'd saved up for it. I had to scheme so much stuff. And I was like, what is the game that I want on PlayStation 2? What am I buying this PlayStation 2 for? The answer, Crazy Taxi.
Oh, hell yeah.
Wow.
It was Crazy
Taxi.
I was not expecting that answer.
That was a GameCube game for me.
Just
I loved
Dreamcast.
Crazy Taxi in the arcade. I didn't have a Dreamcast. I was very jealous. And they announced that they were putting a Sega game on a PlayStation. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And it was one of the Blue Bottom PS2 discs. So it was a CD. Something about that I really enjoyed. But yeah, Crazy Taxi was my first PS2 game. First PS3 game. This is the one that I think actually really matters. And I can like crystallize like this game, this system. I can tie memories to it for myself. Was PS3 Metal Gear Solid 4. I bought the PS3 for the MGS4. I played through the Metal Gear Solid franchise for the very first time leading into that.
Yeah.
And I that was the moment. Everyone has the story. That was the moment that I sold my entire video game collection to be able to buy the PS3.
Know what? That might also be my answer. Like I try to go back to my trophies to see. Did Metal Gear Solid 4 have trophies? Because that's what I did for this question as I went. And I was like, what are my oldest trophies? And so those are the games I found. But I think Metal Gear Solid 4 might have actually been my first PS3 game, if I'm thinking about it more. And I did the same thing where on my PS3, like one of the latter games that I played on my PS3 was Metal Gear Solid 3. And I was so hyped for Metal Gear Solid 4. I was like, I need to play this because 3 is like one of the best games I've ever played. And I started playing 4. I've told the story before where I get up to a certain point in 4 where you go back to an old location. And I was like, wait, I need to stop playing this here because I need to go back and I need to play Metal Gear Solid 1 for the first time. And then once I played Metal Gear Solid 1, I then went and I got Metal Gear Solid 2 and I played that for the first time. And then I went and I played the rest of Metal Gear Solid 4. So I played all those games pretty much like all bulked together.
What an experience, man.
And it was maybe the best order to play those games in.
Yeah, that's super
Thanks,
rad.
Cool G.
Thank you, Cool Gray. So MGS4 on PS3, that was my first there. PS4, honestly, it probably was like Resogun or something, but like PS4 launch didn't really resonate with me. I was too busy playing Super Mario 3D World because it was goated on the Wii U. Doesn't get enough love then, doesn't get enough love now on the Switch. But shout out to 3D World. And then Astro's Playroom for PS5, straight into Miles. What a launch lineup when we really think about it, right?
Great launch lineup.
Shout out to the PS5.
Yeah, for 3, like I wish I just had like texted my brother like 10 minutes before this because I'm sure he knows because he was the main purchaser of the PS3, but I also contributed money towards it. I think I put like maybe, I forgot how much the PS3 cost at the time, but I put like $200 to $300.
$599 US dollars.
I put like $300 towards it. And it was funny because like the other day I saw someone think that I never had the PS3, and my brother was like, not only did you have it, you put your own money towards that console. Like, and then I took it to college and like lived with it. Like the PS3 is such a fun.
I think PS3 was the first console that I actually bought with my own money too.
Yeah, I think it was for me too. I mean, granted, again, I didn't buy all of it. Like I contributed towards it. But yeah, I'm sure it's just whatever the bundle was. Like I don't remember what the hot bundle was at the time because it was like a Black Friday.
PS3 bundles
kinda thing.
probably what was that ATV game?
Oh yeah.
I don't think it was that though.
No, like either MX versus ATV
And
or
maybe
like
he didn't get a
ATV
bundle.
Unplugged or some shit like that.
Maybe he didn't end up getting.
But
a
there's
bundle,
also
I'm not sure.
what was the? Oh man, there was like some off-road game that wasn't like ATV
Yeah.
franchise. Motorstorm? Maybe.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's
oh,
what
you're
I'm
thinking of
thinking
Motorstorm.
of.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think
yeah.
I had Motorstorm, but yeah,
That is
cannot
the most
remember what it is.
bundled ass PlayStation game of all time.
Yeah, Motorstorm was like I was
Maybe we
playing
got
that.
robbed. There was like nothing inside
I was
the
playing that
box.
at Best
like-
Buys for no reason.
Yep.
Like I'm there at playing the demo, and I'm like, why am I playing this video game right here? What's this? You're highlighting, Kevin?
MGS4 bundle, maybe.
Oh,
or-
those MGS4 bundle.
MGS4 bundle seems to be like one of the first bundles that was available.
Maybe it
Oh.
was MGS4. I
Yeah,
don't think
and
it
a
was,
voucher
though.
for a free download PlayStation Network game Pain, which was
Yeah.
the second PlayStation 3 game I ever played because I bought this bundle.
That's incredible.
Those are the
Yeah.
two I
I
have.
should ask him now, and if he has an answer by the end of the show, I'll
Yeah.
swing back to it.
Well, while you do that, let's transition into topic of the show. Dots. Prince of the Persia. No. Prince of. It's been a long day.
I thought, see, you got to lean into it. I thought you did it on purpose.
Hey, by the way, we did our Game of the Year episode. You can go watch that over on the KindaFunny Games Cast or on YouTube or on the Games Cast podcast feed. That's why I'm dressed up a little. I didn't just decide.
Yeah.
where
Also,
to
that's why
be.
Janet's
There's
here.
no shame in being. Yeah, like there's a lot left
There's a lot to
unexplained.
unpack that we haven't explained.
Yeah.
Like, we were just jumping into this Prince of Persia review. Like, what's going on? Like, why does Tim look the freshest ever been? Why is Blessing
Like,
hosting?
You know
Why
how I
does the
left,
smoke
but now I'm
machine
in the
going?
studio. Like, yeah, there's a lot happening today.
Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. You guys have gotten your hands on it. You guys have been playing it. You guys are ready to review it right here on this episode of PS I Love You XOXO. This game has been in development by Ubisoft Montpellier. It comes out January 18th, 2024. It is a 2.5 side-scrolling action-adventure platforming game.
Yeah, 15th for early access, but
Is it really?
Mhm.
Is that Ubisoft Plus?
yeah. I
What a
think so.
deal.
Or
Uh,
just like, I think if you
If you
pre-order
pre-order
or
it,
something,
or
yeah.
you got a certain version.
Yeah.
Tim Geddes, you are our lead reviewer here at KindaFunny for Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
I am.
What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I want to say Ubisoft Montpellier, the same team behind Rayman Legends and Rayman Origins. So lots to be excited about overall. On top of that, Prince of Persia, one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. And I'm very excited to be playing a new one. I'm honestly kind of in disbelief that I'm playing through a new one, and even more so that it is as good as it is. So I'm very, very excited about that.
I will say you're the person who I probably heard most about Prince of Persia from. Like, I'm somebody who I somehow missed out on Prince of Persia back in the day. Like, I've always been aware of it. I think the one Prince of Persia game I might have played was a mobile game on like not even on smartphones. It was like a flip phone. Prince of
yeah,
Persia.
there was a sense of time on OG flip phones, like back when like video games are mobile. Like,
and I think I had that, and I played the heck out of that actually, but outside of that, I've not really had much of a Prince of Persia experience, but I know you're somebody who, rides or dies for Prince of Persia.
Definitely. And, it's funny, like we were just talking about our first PlayStation games we ever played and going down memory lane there a little bit. There was a trend on Twitter a couple weeks ago that was what's the game that like made you fall in love with video games or something like that. And people are posting screenshots of all their different games. And I really kind of had to think about it. And there's a lot of answers I could give, as I'm sure all of us have like different things. Like, of course, I could talk about Pokemon. Of course, I could talk about Mario, et cetera, et cetera. But I really thought back, like, what was the actual first game that made me go, whoa, video games are cool? And the answer is Prince of Persia, the original Prince of Persia. Kevin's mom at a garage sale bought a old school Windows computer. Like, this is... Like, I feel like it was before Windows 95 was even a thing. So that's like wild to think about. And it had a whole bunch of games on it, like that Ski Free and things like that. But this game, Prince of Persia, you open it up and it looked like Agrabah from Aladdin. And just Aladdin was my favorite Disney movie. And there's something about this that was like so cool. Like, it felt so cinematic. And like, this is from never really understanding video games, period. Like, I had never played a Mario or anything at this point. So seeing this and just being able to, like, you hit a button and it does something, but to be so beautifully animated, like rotoscoped, there's a lot of tech that goes into Prince of Persia that I feel really kind of makes it, to this day, like even looking at that gameplay, it looks different than other games did back then, And it was hard as hell. Me and Kev, no matter how many hours we played it, I don't think we ever made it past the first room. Like, it was like very, very different. The moment you get into a sword
There's
fight,
more than one room?
the moment you get into a sword fight with Jafar, you're like, all right, I'm fucked. You just get screwed. But then they rebooted Prince of Persia in 2003, I want to say, with Sands of Time, introducing the idea of being able to rewind time, introducing a lot of parkour into the gameplay. And it was, I'd say, in many ways, a first for its time for a lot of ideas in a third-person action adventure game during the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era. In a lot of ways, kind of introducing light Metroidvania into what everyone else was doing the Devil May Cry route of let's just go out there, stylish action. Prince of Persia was a bit more, but what if we added puzzles to that? Like, what if every room was a sandbox for you to go through? This one's probably a couple years later.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think
this one
this is
looks
the
like
mobile
it's
game I
based on
played.
the movie.
Oh, it's not. Okay, cool.
but it's similar to
I mean,
this,
keep
yeah.
looking because you'll get there eventually.
But then keeping you guys going through this history lesson here, Sands of Time was very, very special. It was an amazing game, won awards, won so many different awards, and it deserved it. And then they pushed out the sequel, Warrior Within, and then the Two Thrones after that. And I love them. They're all great games. They're not Sands of Time, though. Sands of Time was the one. Warrior Within took this really, really, really cool character that had so much personality, and he was fun and quippy, and then just made him like, I'm dark and broody, and now there's like metal music playing, and it was just like, all right, this is still good, but you kind of took the soul out of what made Sands of Time so charming, even though the gameplay still held up. And then they eventually on Xbox Live Arcade put out a remake of the original Prince of Persia, but in the style and look and gameplay a little bit more of Sands of Time. And I remember playing that and being like, God damn, this is so good. What if they made a Prince of Persia Metroidvania?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Prince of Persia feels like it was made to be in this genre. And they did that with The Lost Crown. And it is phenomenal. It is one of my favorite Metroidvanias ever. And if anything, it is making me realize I think Metroidvanias might be my favorite genre. Like, I've always been a 2D platformer guy, and I've known that about myself for a long time. But the idea of looking back at the original Prince and being like, oh, they talked about this as a cinematic 2D platformer. And like playing through this, I'm like, this is a cinematic Metroidvania, 2D Metroidvania. And they're really pulling that off. It reminds me a lot of other games I love, like Ori.
Yep.
And there's so many different games that I can use as examples that really kind of take the concept of what a Metroidvania could be. Even Metroids themselves. Metroid Dread, I loved last year. Was that last year?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Loved that game. This feels like it's taking a lot of those ideas and just continuing them, wrapping it in the Prince of Persia formula and world, but with a whole new take. This is a new Prince, new ideas. It gives so much homage to the original Prince of Persia and to the Sands of Time through its abilities in really, really tasteful ways, while also just being a really banger game by itself. I want to say this right now. I still have not beat the game. I am about 18 hours into it. I am somewhere between 60 and 70% through, I would say. And I do not want to rush this at all. I love this game. If I were to give it a score right now, where do I think my score is going to end up? I can't imagine it not being a 5, like a 5 out of 5 on the KindaFunny scale. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is going to be a game that I am very, very annoying about forever. I think that this is one of those ones that's going to stick with me. And what's very interesting about that is the first hour or two, that wasn't the case. I was playing it. I'm like, I'm happy I'm playing a new Prince game, but I don't know if all the pieces are adding up. Like, it's a little fine, just fine. Like, I get what's happening here. I get it's a tutorial. I get they're easing us in, but I need more abilities. I need to be moving faster. Like, the things I love about Prince of Persia, I'm not really seeing. And I'm so happy I stuck with it because pretty early on, it's not like, oh, you have to play 6 hours before it gets good. You do need to get through some stuff, and it's not even bad. The beginning's not bad at all. But I think the best way I can frame how I feel about the game is booting it up for the first time. You get the story, you get the exposition, and as they're giving you the exposition of what's happening, the images are just like JPEGs that are kind of being pulled a little bit, like not even fully animated, and it feels cheap. It doesn't feel like a super high quality experience they're putting out there. And I was like, oh, no, I want more for this franchise. And I really feel like those decisions were a disservice to it because as you start going in, this is one of the most beautifully designed games I've played. The art style is impeccable. The style is off the charts. The moment you get to the first boss fight, you're like, oh my God, this is cool as hell. The biomes are very unique, very well thought out. There is care put into every single little thing. The mechanics of the game, both from a gameplay perspective and from a world perspective, are off the charts. It feels so damn good to play. But on top of that, the world, this is a shout out I always give to Tropical Freeze, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. The world doesn't feel like there's just a bunch of things floating in space. Everything is connected. So when you're on a platform, you understand the weight of that platform and what it connects to and why when it falls down, it makes you fall down this way with the physics and the momentum in a Metroidvania. And it's so damn cool and so damn special. I really could talk about this thing forever. The last thing I want to say before I pass it to Janet real quick is it reminds me of so many of my favorite things from so many other games put into one. And bless, this is the thing that might sell you a little bit. I've never played a game that reminds me of what Subspace Emissary from Super Smash Bros. Brawl could have been.
Oh man.
It is.
Oh,
it feels like this Metroidvania. It feels like Smash Brothers. It controls like Smash Brothers. The dodge and just the way that the parries and everything work. It plays just like Smash Brothers, but it's challenging as hell. The puzzles are really interesting, and just the way that the map is. I'm like, oh man, this was what Sakurai saw with Subspace Emissary.
Janet Garcia, what do you see with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown?
I think this game is absolutely incredible. I'm right there with Tim. I did beat it. I finished it last night. Shout out to bringing the PlayStation to my hotel room and knocking it out. It didn't take that long. I finished it after dinner. And it took me about like 20-something hours to beat. So I do think that 20 to 25 is right there. And then completionist-wise, according to the in-game completion percentage, I'm 70% through all the content. I too want, like, if I could have taken more time, like I really want to try to, hit stuff for content. If I could have taken more time, I would have. And even though I'm already done, I'm gonna go back and like I want to get the platinum. I'm
planning a platinum this.
It's so incredible. I just kind of building on the things that Tim laid out there. It is so much the DNA of so many incredible games. Besides the Ori call out, which you see, and not just that Gareth is also part of the composition team there, which I'm like, oh my god, of course. Who did some of the music, did the music for Ori and the Blind Forest and that kind of suite of games. But you see that in I think the movement and the way you kind of float and zip through space, like as you get additional abilities, but also even just in like the types of enemies. There's incredible enemy variety in this game as well. Like you never get bored of what you're doing. It's compelling every time. There's Metroid Dread elements in the difficulty, maybe a little too much at times, but also there's so many cool like settings that you can tweak to really make it your own. I'm not a parry person. I totally was parrying in this game.
You have to.
There's an incredible you do have to, and I think it does push you towards the parries, but there are like, as I'm getting more and more, I'll try to do mostly high level and we'll get into the weeds, but there's this incredible amulet system where you can basically like spec your character, with like different buffs, primarily buffs. There are a few like buff debuff amulets, but that's kind of rare. Most of them are some form of a buff.
Real quick, jumping in on the amulet thing. The amulet system in this reminds me of what I wished the badge system in Mario Wonder was.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of promise, there's a lot of variety that you can imagine, like, oh, like I put this badge for this level, put that badge for that level, but we didn't end up actually doing that.
Exactly.
This, you're switching amulets constantly.
Yeah, like, and the main thing I did is I had my like core design that I was like leaning into, and then for certain bosses, I'm like, okay, well, obviously, like I'm not exploring, so I'm gonna take like there's an amulet that like, brings like the gems towards you. It's like I don't need to wear that for a boss battle, right? And then, but I bring up the amulet system because you can kind of lean into different aspects. So you mentioned like the parrying, like there's also a dodge in this game, and later you do get kind of late. At least I got it late. There's an amulet that like allows like when you dodge, like you also like do damage or something. And I'm like, oh, what a cool thing if you're like heavy into the dodge. There's stuff that would like lean more on like classic buffs, like, health. There's also like this, once I got the health regen amulet, I was like, oh, we're rocking and rolling now. Like I'm just a tank, and then it's like, when you combine, the way they synergize is so beautiful because you'll combine something like the health regen amulet with the, as I take damage, I gain Athra, which is like your, it's kind of like the meter for your special. It like fills up, it can go down over time, like if you get hit, but also you can change the buffs to make it so that like, oh, well, when I get hit, I convert some of that. I got really solid at the parries, especially in the beginning. So I put on the amulet where like I build up Athra when I parry. So now I'm parrying, I'm building up the Athra, I'm doing the special move, and it all ends up being in conversation together so well. I see Celeste in this with like the difficult platforming sections. Specifically, they have like these coins you can get that are literally the strawberries in Celeste. Like they function the same way.
And when you say function the same way, you mean you see it, you know what you need to do.
Yes.
So it's going to take you 30 minutes to try the same 20-second sequence over and over and over and over.
But also
and
when you
closer
touch
and closer.
when you touch it until you land to
cute.
safe land, that's
Yeah.
that's the strawberry aspect.
Man,
of
y'all
it.
are selling me on this, man.
It is so good,
Hey, real
and
talk,
I think
bless you and Andy.
Yeah.
You got
and I
play.
think it's a game that and I said this during the preview cycle because I've been like fucking living with this game like in different press events. I did the SGF demo and I was like, yeah, it seems really good. I did the 4-hour preview and I'm like, yeah, still seems really good. And then I played this, and the thing that really elevated it for me is when I sat down to play it, I was pretty firm on like, this is a great video game. I'm thinking, kind of 4 out of 5 vibes. Could it go down? Sure. Could it go up? Sure. But that's kind of where I was at. And I felt like I was there for a while. And then it gets to a point where they're just singing so well that like I can't not say this is a 5 out of 5. Like it's a 5 out of 5 video game. Like it because I think before that there is an aspect to it that is inherently a little derivative. And I do know that like Prince of Persia as a franchise, to your point, was such a trendsetter that it's like, well, it's like, okay, yeah, but a lot of games have come out and like, how is this not like those other games? And I think what makes it special is just how good it is at executing and how much it leans into both combat difficulty and platforming difficulty while also giving space for players to, whether it's you just dialing down the difficulty, whether it's you like min-maxing the amulet system, it allows for more grace. It's like the grace that I wanted in Metroid Dread, where I'm like, I don't want to sit here and almost be in tears because it's too hard and I can't do it because I love the exploit. This has that give both from a setting setup, but also from the way they design the game, where those platforming sections aren't too hard, or a lot of times they are optional challenges. And yeah, the puzzles are great. It is a game where like there's sections of it where I'll record it and be like, I need to show everybody this because look at how, if you love like a good platformer, this is up there with the Super Meat Boy, with Celeste, with that vibe. Again, it's not that the whole time, but when it has those sections, I'm like, oh my God. And then you did it. And it's like, it's so satisfying to do.
It really is. And I agree with you totally there. I think taking it even a step further, it's the platforming sections are so great, like the super hard challenging ones. But also for being a Metroidvania, I think that one of the defining features of what makes a Metroidvania stand out from just the rest of the hundreds that are out there is how unique are the abilities that you're getting and how well do they implement those into gameplay.
Yeah.
And that's to me where this goes to the 5, because the creativity of the abilities you get in addition to the platforming they're asking you to do. This has been Prince since day one, where it's platform mixed with combat, mixed with puzzles, figuring that all out. The abilities are all tuned to please all 3 of those things.
Yes.
And the way that it kind of like continues to progress is just so satisfying. And I am so upset that like my biggest criticism of the game is the pacing in the beginning, because my biggest compliment to the game is the pacing throughout the rest of it. Like the amount of change-ups and shake-ups, the amount of just random enemy encounters. Like here's a boss fight out of nowhere. Here's a puzzle out of nowhere that like just you fall into or whatever. All that stuff is so satisfying because the abilities and gameplay and parkour and platforming and all of it come together so damn well. And it's funny bringing up Metroid Dread. I actually think that there's a lot of similarities. There are two. We get a ton of Metroidvanias. I feel like oftentimes they're more on the what we would call like retro indie tip.
Yeah.
This and Metroid Dread they feel more like it's a AAA game. You know what I mean? In some ways and not in others, whatever. But in terms of presentation, in terms of like the meat that they're offering, Metroid Dread is 9 hours long. This is 25 hours long.
And it feels totally warranted.
And that's incredible.
When I sat down for the preview, I was, and I'm still like worried that a lot of people are going to write this game off or be like, I don't know, I heard it was good, but like, please get to it because it's so incredible. But when I heard the hour count, I was like, that's going to be, and again, I'm kind of speaking more for peers rather than fans, because I know there are fans out there that like love meaty games, like they want like that double-digit hours all the time. But I do think for people that are maybe hesitant, like hardcore fans, might be, like, oh, it's like a lot of time. But I got into it and I almost didn't want it to end. Like it all felt so warranted. I think the only thing I didn't like about the game was I do think there are some boss battles that seem like they're a bit much, that the telegraphing isn't quite as clear to me. But again, maybe just charge it to the game. Maybe it's like, maybe I just don't got it like that for those certain encounters. And I wish it has a fast travel system. I kind of wish it was like I could just go to so the trees are where you like save and get your health back, and then there's also like separate fast travel points. And I don't think there's enough fast travel points, like per biome, personally. Again, haven't 100% of the map, but I'm fairly close. And I just wish they let you go like tree to tree, because there's like a lot of trees, but there's not as many of these like kind of horse statues. And I'm like, and the thing is, again, it's a Metroidvania. I'm going to go over the stuff I want to go over, or go over the stuff I need to go over. So I just feel like that would have helped with like a few of those like occasional pain points if you did, even if you weren't lost, if you're just like, I want to go back, because the other thing that we got to talk about for sure is the memory shards.
So I want to jump off.
Before you get there, actually, I do want to hear a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. You can get out of your negative thought cycles and find some mental and emotional peace, and it can give you the tools you need to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. Some of my best friends use BetterHelp and love how helpful it can be for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've already made by visiting betterhelp.com/kindafunny today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/kindafunny. BetterHelp.com/kindafunny. I want to jump up because I feel like the criticism you had there, I'm 100% in line with, where the fast travel system was something that I was hoping there was more of. And I'm always like, God, like, I wish the trees were fast travel.
Yeah.
Like, that would be awesome. But also, I realized as I was playing it, I was like, this is me trying to make this a different Metroidvania. Where the fast travel things are, they're paced so well that anytime you have to back travel or just like go out of your way when you're like, I just need to get here, they're guiding you. It's Metroid Dread. There was oftentimes I'd get lost. And I'm like, where the hell am I going? This, I feel like anytime I felt lost, I feel like, I'd see something or some little like someone would be whistling in the background or some little girl would be singing. And I'm like, oh, I'm on the path. Like, I'm going where I'm supposed to be going.
I got lost one time in this whole game, and it's just because the classic thing where like I just missed how you loop around to open the door. Like I missed it like hours ago, and then was kind of like, oh, but I was doing clean for a lot of that. But then at a certain point, I was like, I think I missed something up there. But other than that, I like never got lost. But I also never felt like I was on rails either. It felt very like natural, to your point, where I think. And part of that is also like the wind system. And again, you see Ghost of Tsushima in it as well. Like, but and these are all great things because I think those are like smart design choices. I feel like where they have good design that's in conversation with other great games, they have that. But then they also do say a few things on their own, and that is where like the memory shards and things come in.
And so the memory shards, we gotta talk about this. A couple days ago, we did the KF Smileys, which are our award show, giving love to a bunch of different categories. One of the categories was best innovation in games, and one of the nominees for it was the active time lore in Final Fantasy 16. We love it. We're like, this is a feature that needs to be in other games. The memory system in Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is going to make the list for next year.
Yeah.
For people that don't know what it is, when you are playing this game, you have a limited amount of memories that you just hit down on the D-pad, and it essentially takes a picture of the screen you're on, and it puts it on the map. So when you pull up the map, there's a little memory thing you can, like icon, like a waypoint essentially on your map, that when you hover over it, it will show the screenshot that you took. So for a Metroidvania, you're like, oh, there's this door. I don't have the ability to open it yet.
Oh my God. Thank God.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank God somebody's figured this out.
Yes.
Yes.
This is like my number one complaint with Metroidvanias.
So then when you get the ability and you're like, oh, I remember where this could go, instead of being like, where was it? Literally, or being like, we all have our own mental keys that we come up with where we're like, this blue one's going to represent this and this picture.
And on top of that, the beauty is they also have icons on top of that that you can do. So what really ended up being fire for me is I could because you have a limited amount of the memory shards, and I had asked, I'm trying to think, I talked to the lead animator of the game during the preview cycle, and I was like, why is there a limited amount? Is it because you want to make it like kind of hard in that way? Is it because you just don't want players to ruin the map? And they said, a little bit of both. Like, we definitely don't want it to be like you have 50 of these. You start out with like, I don't know, 10 or 15, and you can gain them as well as you continue. And to be honest, I think they gave you like the perfect amount. Like, I only ever like, every now and then I'd be like, oh man, I'm out. Like, but that was pretty rare. Usually I could take a picture of everything that I wanted to. And when you marry that with the icons, what I started doing, and then if I ran out of memory shards, I would use the icons, is I started like, I put a star for like, the Mara thing, jump up superstar. I'm like, this is where, if I get anything that lets me jump higher or like get up higher, this thing is too high. And that's going to be the star icon. So, and
So
then
you're
it
like
was,
notating yourself.
yeah. And like, so you
Thank
can like
God.
really mix and match like all that stuff. And it's so awesome because like, it just like, I can't even begin to explain how euphoric it felt to get something like, I'm trying to think of maybe the earliest thing you get. You get the dash pretty early.
Yeah.
Like the dash, like, one use case is crossing big gaps. So like being able to like mark that and be like, as soon as you get the dash, I'm like, great. And I know exactly where to go if I want to go back there. And if I'm near there, I can like go back. And, obviously other things like the map fog help indicate that too. But they're all just really nicely in conversation with each other where it's like, oh, great. I know exactly what to do. And it is just like one of the best things ever. And I feel like for the most part, I would say they removed almost all the pain that comes with Metroidvania and just kept the good.
And I think they replaced that pain with difficulty in combat and difficulty in puzzles of like, you really gotta to think and you really gotta try. You can't button mash your way through this game. Again, there's a lot of difficulty options and there's a lot of things you can do. So you could put it down easy and then you can button mash your way through it and you'll still enjoy it. And it's totally worth playing that way. But playing through a normal difficulty, like you need to parry, you need to dodge. You can't just like go and just hack and slash because they want you to play this more. Just real quick, I want to say this because like I feel like we got blessed right there.
Yeah,
we're getting so close, and I think here's the thing that's going to be hook, line, and sinker. All right, the combat, very fighting game like, fighting game like. All right, a lot of parries, a lot of timing, a lot of spacing going on. Not a big surprise. The one thing that I think takes it above and beyond is how stylish the combat all is, how varied your moveset is. And she was talking about this earlier with the, what's the magic called? Aphra, where you essentially have a gauge that fills up. You can have up to 2 levels, maybe more, but 2 levels of these abilities. And then you can, there's level 1 abilities and level 2 abilities. It's straight up Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
You have
there is
Street
more,
Fighter
I guess.
special.
It goes up to 3.
Yeah, yeah. So there's Street Fighter.
Maybe more, I guess. I didn't 100% it either.
Yeah.
But yeah, it goes up.
But they're Street Fighter style, like, super moves that you can use in combat. And when you use it in a boss fight, when the music's hitting, and the music's always hitting, and the hype's popping off, the colors, and like you understand the pattern of the boss, and you're like, I got this thing down, and you're just parrying.
Yeah.
Super combo level 1, super combo level 2. It is just
That's awesome.
beautiful poetry.
That's incredible.
And the animation work is really incredible in those sequences too. It's honestly like up there with like God of War and like Spider-Man takedowns, like in terms of style, where it's like you get that same hype level. I guess I toss in like Yakuza games as well with like the wild like animations for like big abilities. There's so many great things about this. I want to go back to what you said about the ways that the abilities both jive with the exploration and the combat, because I feel like the exploration it's fairly expected, right? You can kind of learn how to like zip around, and especially if you're good at platforming and like platforming, it's like, okay, like, I'll just be dashing for fun because it's a good time.
Yeah.
But even just like stuff
Can we
like
talk about the dash for a second
go
though?
for it.
Because it's the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like this to me is the
Sort of
perfect
slow-mo.
example of the marriage of the original Prince and Sands of Time. Like his dash is him running through time.
Yeah.
And so
That's
instead of
sick.
running on the wall, he jumps up and just runs like in the air, and it's just so freaking cool, man.
That's sick.
I think too, like the there's like a little like a dude, like one of your friends or whatever, who like gives you like your little tutorials if you want them, and you get like shards or something for them. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do it because I want like a lot of money. And frankly, like doing those, probably the most value I've ever gotten out of those.
Out of combat tutorials?
Yes,
Easily.
because literally stuff that I never would have thought about. There's like one of my favorite moves was with the I think I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, but the it's not. It's the chakram. Like it's basically you have kind of like you end up kind of getting like a boomerang essentially. It's not quite a boomerang, but whatever.
Captain
right?
America
It's like a
shield.
magic thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So you throw it out and it can like zip, and it zips back to you. And you can do other things with it as you like. There's an amulet that can make it. Oh, you hold triangle when it's out. It makes like a whirlwind of like destruction, like a small one. But the thing that was really sweet is you can throw it out. It comes back to you. Then you can parry it, and then you
that's
can
sick.
parry it up to I think like 2 times. I don't know if there's a
it's
limit.
unlimited. Yeah, it's only if you keep.
It's always
hitting,
tough to tell because
because there's a lot going on. It limits you during certain things of like if it hits you, then you're done.
Yeah.
But like if
and
you
it counts for building up your Athra if you have. So it's like, I'm building my own parry opportunities within like boss battles and things, and it's like, man, that's
it's
so
satisfying.
Cool.
And we wouldn't have thought about it, but that combat tutorial teaches you it. So like, Bless, here's a perfect example. Like, if I was trying to attack her, I guess, like I would throw the thing, the shield, right?
Yeah.
To where you are. And then as it's coming back to me, I'm striking her.
Yeah.
It then hits her and goes through her. When it comes to me, I can parry it again and it bounces it back through her and you just do it over and over.
Another really cool thing, because I don't want to like, obviously give away all of the cool things in the game, because I think that's part of the fun is the discovering like those things in time. But another one I want to highlight that I never would have thought of was so you can make like that kind of like copy of yourself, like there's like an ability where that's kind of what it is. Again, it works a little differently, but just for visualizing. And you can like, there's a heavy attack that you can do where you hold down, like play on PlayStation again, you hold down square and it charges you up and then you like unleash like a wave attack. You can hold that down so it's charged, make a copy of yourself, shoot it out, return to that copy, and then you automatically shoot it out again. So it kind of like doubles that attack for you when normally it takes a while to charge. And it's stuff like that where I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of doing that. So like at first, the tutorial started out very basic with just like kind of combos. And even with that, I'm like, oh, okay, you can like do a lot. But then like as it just, the payoff gets better and better. And it's just like, it's such a surprise because I think so many games, like it's more, oh, okay, I don't know, it's a cool combo I can do, but I'm just going to probably button mash my way through it. But here it's like, oh, I'm getting real strategies. In so many times, like just so much of this game makes fucking sense. I feel like I'm like, it's like we're gonna become like a Lost Crown truther with you, where I'm like, you guys gotta understand. But the design is just so brilliant. I
wrote
love this
down
game so much.
It's always worth exploring.
Yeah.
There's always a reward. It is always cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to hear all of this. You know, I've gotten the code as well, and like I've not gotten the chance to play as much of it as I'd like because like I went on, I booted it up, and then as soon as I booted it up, I got another code, and I was like, oh man, I kind of want to check this thing out too. And so I've just decided to go on the other game. But it's that thing where Tim's talking about of the first, I guess first hour or so, probably like starting off a bit slow. I felt that in the first 30 minutes. I was like, ooh, all right, let's see how this goes. And hearing everything that you guys are talking about actually has me very excited to go back. I think my final question on this is, what is the story like? What is the narrative like? Are the characters memorable? How's that stuff?
So I think the story is probably the thing that like turned me off most in the beginning, like talking about the intro animation, all that stuff. And it's so paint by numbers. It's like a generic thing of like, there are 7 immortals. We call ourselves the Immortals, and we're like we're the Power Rangers, we're the Avengers, we're the badasses. And oh wait, there's a bad guy and something bad's happening, and then the prince gets captured, and you have to go save the prince. You are not the prince.
Okay.
You're a different character named Sargon.
You're just a guy from
You're
Persia.
a dude named Sargon, yeah. And there are different outfits you can unlock throughout the game, but this game
aren't that good.
This game does my favorite thing when it comes to outfits, which is I just love the original outfit so much that I don't want the other outfits.
Also, I feel like I did use one other skin that I got because I'm like, oh, this looks like a little cooler, but it was tough to find like one cooler, so I do wish that was
I do like how
better.
the main character looks.
Yeah.
It looks dope.
The design's
Hell,
great.
Yeah.
I love it.
I do
Freaking love
think for the story, yes, it is very like, it's really cliche, but at the same time, I like the anime weight of the story.
Yeah.
And let's see, I'm gonna try to get this one because I don't want to spoil anything. There's definitely like a narrative payoff combat combo that I really appreciated in the
100%.
game, where I was like, oh, this boss is really cool because of what it narratively means, and even like the way their attack pattern sort of mimics it is cool when they implore like combat to almost serve as storytelling within it. Now, again, I don't think this is like gonna be like my narrative of the year or anything like that, but I think the story is serviceable at worst, and like, oh, it's got some cool stuff at best, and I feel like that's a good spot for it.
Absolutely. The beginning, I was like, this is serviceable. I get it, but I'm kind of like let down. And I mean, another thing that I think is important for me to point out, I did have the feeling of this is not my prince. Like I want Sands of Time Prince. This is not my guy. Like it's very, very close. They're obviously trying to do that, but I'm like, so I went in a little hesitant. So like that, I just feel like that's important to say. But yeah, the story, I was kind of like, whatever. By the time you get to the first boss fight, I was totally turned around. I'm like, I'm so in. I love this. I'm invested. I want to know what's happening with these characters. I'm with Janet. I don't think it's going to win awards or anything for the best story. It's good though. It's a good story.
Okay.
It's got me. I'm excited to find out what happens. I'm when we first see the group of characters, I'm like, there's no way I give a fuck about any of you. And now I'm like, you know what? I give a fuck about you just enough.
And there is like a little bit of intrigue to like, there's an aspect of like who's on what side and what side's the right side kind of vibe running through it, where it's like, oh, really, like, are there heroes and villains or just people going through something? So it's got a little something. It's got a smidge of edge, but it's not like wildly compelling.
One thing I don't love about the game, that's I guess story based, but it is also combines with the gameplay, is I feel like the lore, the amount of things you can just read. There's a lot of interactable things in the game, and I think for the most part they're great. But there's a lot of things you're just reading that feel like just textbook history stuff. Like I'm missing, unless I'm very stupid as well, but I'm missing how it connects to the game in a way that I'm like, why do I care? Like what's this actually? It's world building and like, kind of just like atmosphere, but I'm like, I am really confused about this puzzle right now. I would love if there's something in this essay that kind of gave me a hint.
It's like you pick up like this, like there's one thing in the game where it is a hint for the puzzle, but that's like it. Like it's like, and it's a lot of the classic video game thing where I picked up this mug and I like, you told me this like some Canadian mascot or something. It's like I read everything there is to know about this character, and it's like, bro, I'm not doing all that. Like, I'm sorry that happened to you or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it brings it back to like playing games as a kid where I'm like, anything that's readable, I'm skipping this shit, right? But I think as we've grown, there's been games that have done it right where it is like the stuff that you're reading or like what the lore drops are like specific to an area, and so it is. Oh, I'm over here, and now you're telling me the story about something that happened.
Or like
here
more succinct, or having like
I think of like the last.
Like, there's a lot of solutions.
I think of like the Last of Us notes that you find that are telling the story of like the dude in the sewers or whatever, right?
And I'm the opposite of you. Ever since I was little, I read everything. If there's something to read, I come from the mentality of like, if you're putting this in here, it's important to me, and if the moment I'm into a world, I'm like, I know I love this. I want all of it. And I want to understand what makes it tick. And I just feel like a lot of the lore entries here didn't service that to me. It just kind of felt like, and I've read them all, but I'm just kind of like, I feel like this I get why it's there, but I just feel like it was unnecessary and kind of got in the way of the moment I'm reading through things. I'm like, I wish this was actually doing this. That's not a good thing.
I will say, like, to kind of tie it into, more holistic thoughts, like I'm like looking over my notes, and there was an enemy I encountered, and this is a degular enemy, like just a regular person on the street, where it was so shocking to me, like what this enemy did, that I audibly gasped and my jaw dropped. And I wrote in my notes, this is a 5 out of 5. I was like, I was literally just like, oh my God. Like, and I don't do that. Like, I think people who like, know me, have seen my content, followed me, like I'm not a big reacts guy. Like, I'm not like, oh, like I'm just not like that. Like, I'm not like so like when I say this, I mean that so genuinely. Like I was just like, oh my God, like, whoa. Like I was so shocked by some of the like attack patterns and characteristics that these different enemies had, and the way that it ends up making every single room somewhat engaging, like in different ways. And then the final things I really want to make sure that like I get to, shout out from the game is like there's a lot of moments where I do think it does a good job as far as like Metroidvania, like classic stuff, where like sometimes you kind of know what ability you're getting, but other times you really don't. And I love when I can't see stuff like that coming. I don't mind when I can see it coming, like, the gap thing, right? Like you get the it's like, okay, clearly I'm gonna, but like there are other things where I'm like, oh, so that's their solution to this. Always appreciate that in a Metroidvania. And this is kind of a poser comment because I don't crochet currently. But I wrote down this game feels like a crochet project where it's just so satisfying to work on the individual pieces and then connect them together.
I'm so happy you said that. That's awesome, because one of the last things I'd want to say about this for sure is that I know a good Metroidvania is in my hands when I look at the menu of skill tree and upgrades and all that stuff, and I'm like, I want it all.
Yeah.
Like I want it all. Oh, I can't wait till I can do this. I can't wait till that's a little stronger. I can't wait. Like it just feels good. Like you want to get all the things.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all this. You guys had me so excited to actually get back to this game. Hopefully I'm able to pick it back up soon. But ladies and gentlemen, let us know in the comments below. Are you excited for Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown? Before we get out of here, though, I do want to bring in a quick This Week in PlayStation. Because do you believe a PlayStation State of Play is rumored? I'm pulling from Cass Ehlers Stevenson at True Trophies. Speaking on the Giant Bomb podcast and clipped on Twitch, reliable journalist Jeff Grubb stated, quote, "There's a state of play coming. I'd expect it in the next few weeks." He went on to speculate that it'll likely be disappointing because Sony seems to use the events to fulfill contractual marketing obligations rather than announce anything fun or exciting.
Wow.
Why does
Jeff hate PlayStation?
listen, that's what happens when you don't put out a patapon in years. Where do you guys stand on a new PlayStation? New state of play. Like, are you guys excited for the idea of an early year state of play? I feel like we kind of go back and forth on them in like the years where it is when we're getting closer to March or June. It's like, all right, cool, this is gonna be the good one. But like other times, it's like, ooh, is this gonna hit? Do you guys feel like we need a state of play currently?
I mean, the state of plays are definitely the weaker of like PlayStation jumping onto YouTube kind of vibe. So I don't mind them having like, I'd rather have more than less in that sense because it's not like they're all bangers anyway. And yeah, frankly, I wouldn't mind like an earlier thing. I definitely think like the conversation around this year is a little bit like, obviously there's a lot of great games coming out this year, right? We just talked about one of them. But there's also like some gaps in the calendar, some question marks on certain titles. Like, if this could give me a little devil inside so I could sleep at night, that would be great. I haven't slept in years. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. I'm kind of in a place where, like, I think this year has a few question marks. I want to see, I know I talk about it and it's become a meme, right? But, like, where is Stellar Blade? What's going on with Stellar Blade? I want answers to Stellar Blade.
I can't wait for that for you. It's
and I think there are a few like that, right? I think, honestly, I think the state of play makes sense because Helldivers is around the corner.
Yeah, that's
And I think final state of play to kind of, like, try to drum up hype and excitement for Helldivers makes sense. Maybe we see a trailer for Final Fantasy. Like, I could see it not happening, though, because, like, Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy, so like it's gonna have an impact no matter what. But I kind of understand what Jeff's saying, just in terms of like the state of plays often feel like they are serving like the third party agreement sort of thing. But I think it could be both, right? Like I think if you're able to come through with a state of play that is, all right, here's Helldivers, and then also here's like some games that are coming on PlayStation this year, help set the tone for 2024. I think that could be that could make sense for what a state of play is in the next few weeks if we see one.
I will never root against a game showcase. Like specifically from the big three. I want them to win. I always want them to be good. I want them to be as great as they possibly can be. And they can't always. There's going to be the lows. There's going to be disappointments. I really just wish State of Play had a better identity and better expectations that I was like, I know it's going to be a banger. You just said, well, State of Play is their like lesser thing, implying that showcase is their better thing. Yeah. Well, we've learned recently that showcases don't necessarily mean greatness. And State of Play,
I said it was better. I didn't say it was good.
State of Plays don't necessarily suck. Like there's, I've been a very strong State of Play defender in the sense of like there's been some bangers and banger announcements, but there's been a lot of like bad ones too. So I don't expect this one to be like that crazy or exciting, but I do think, to your question of like, do they need to do one in February or whatever, I do think it's interesting that Nintendo's kind of always owned that February. If they have their direct, it's usually a big one to talk about their year. And we're seeing a new trend of Xbox really bringing the heat of last year doing their, I'm always going to forget the name of this.
Developer
underscore direct. Yes.
Can't forget the underscore.
You got to remember it. Where Hi-Fi Rush was debuted, and
it rushed into our hearts.
And here we have the announcement that next week we're getting another one with the debut of Indiana Jones from Machine Games. That you don't get much bigger than that from Xbox pre-announcing something that's going to be at one of these shows, right? Like that's pretty damn big. So I wouldn't be surprised if PlayStation, does something to try to show up and at least be part of the conversation.
I do have the PS3 game also from the beginning of the show, Little Big Planet 3.
Awesome.
Oh, I think Little Big Planet might have been one of my first PS3 games as well.
There you go.
Oh man, I wanted to look up like every state of play to see like, how have they been like positioning them?
I'm not here anymore, but like even though I'm physically here right now, but I'm not here anymore. Y'all got to redo the state of play. We ate with that episode. It was so good.
Yeah, that was an incredible episode of PS Love You. You've got to revisit it. But yeah, looking through.
I just want to say real quick, because Final Fantasy VII Remake getting like officially re-announced and all that stuff, state of play. Street Fighter 6, state of play. I think Resident Evil 3 Remake, state of play.
I think for me, state of plays picked up. Like state of plays, I think started strong and then had 2021 had a dip where it's like, did y'all play? I think Greg was the one that mentioned like maybe they didn't plan to keep doing these things, but like I think in 2022 is when they came back for me. Like that was like Street Fighter 6 and RE4 remake and like Metal Gear Solid Delta might have been part of that if I remember correctly.
That was Showcase, right?
No, I think that was, or maybe
I imagine that was Showcase. I don't know.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it was Showcase.
Yeah. But I think State of Plays definitely started to come back a bit in like 2022, whereas like they felt for a while like they were like, oh man,
I mean, we're talking about the difference of like 6 months, like from what I'm talking about to what you're talking about.
No, there was a year, because I remember when we did the State of Play episode, we went through like each of them were like, yeah, no, these are not hidden.
I mean, my point is it's just inconsistent. I feel like it's so wildly variable that like there's just I don't even think it's fair to say is the state of play good or bad because state of play doesn't even know what it is.
That's fair.
Isn't that bad though? You know, I think that is
Oh, well,
part
that- yes,
that is
that-
part
that
of
is-
like that conversation of like, how can I get like, I mean, I'm always excited to hear from anybody about anything because I want to know what's going on. But it's like the idea of being excited for a state of play. It's like it's hard to get excited when you like. I don't feel your excitement about it. You know what I mean? Like from PlayStation, like as a you don't have that oomph, that punch, that identity that it hasn't been figured out yet. But
In the
we'll see.
last-
It's a tough thing to do.
In the last 3 years, yeah, since 2021, there's always been a state of play in February.
Okay.
And like some of those have coincided with things, right? Like last year, I think last year might have been a general one. The year before that was Gran Turismo. Last year might have been PSVR.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it would make a lot of sense for them to do one in February and probably have it be held iris driven, but
Yeah, I think so too.
we shall see. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, this has been PS I Love You XOXO. Janet Garcia, thank you so much for guesting on this episode. It's funny
Yeah,
how you
thanks
left
for-
and then immediately came back for the first episode.
It
of the
also
year.
came back in studio, but then like we messed up and didn't acknowledge it for
Yeah.
like the first 30 minutes. But
So funny.
yeah, it was fun being here. It's always
Cool.
fun being
Anything
here.
you want to plug?
Yeah, you know, you can follow me across social media. My handle is GameOnysus. That's GameOnysus. I'm on Patreon. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Twitch. And I have my own written work is on pen2pixels.com. That is where I pray this written review will end up at some point. I've been really trying to get it out there. There's not a lot of time left to write it, but I have some notes. So we'll see if we can make a written version of like me and Tim's discussion here today.
Yeah, love that. Go check that out for sure.
There you go. Of course, this has been PS I Love You XOXO, your weekly PlayStation conversation. I've been Blessing. That's been Janet. That's been Tim.
Play this game.
Play this game. And until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.